Or would it be your next marriage vow? Viewer, piano player, are you buying a piano because you are truly out of your mind? Are you buying my piano because I have lost my head? Are you opening your wallet for the monarch who claims that the oldest parliament in the world is from the 13th century? Are you opening it for a monarch who had some squabble over...
Louis Singer, sing for you, who does not pay her. Roll out the barrel. Give me a barrel of love.
France, that the Black Prince needed to never really be crowned. Are you buying a piano brand by such madness that you do not know that the speech that summed up the whole preponderance before this wars and summons of blood of Agincourt of 1415 is only something which Louis Singer speaks in some... Louis Singer speaks in some excess.
Maybe you have a tune you would like to play for her.
You would give them Chinese cereal.
And you wonder if buying a piano is only simply about going into a shop and opening your wallet.
You would love to hear it. Look forward to hearing from you. Bye-bye, my friend.
Oh.
That, you know, she is international concert pianist.
Oh, in truth, you can do that, viewer. I am not stopping you. I would only remind you of the time when a particular Frankenstein was ushered out of one of the finest shops in London because this monster was more loyal than its breeder, its Frankenstein. Yes. But Frankenstein, viewer, is not born of frankincense, is not born of gold, because a pianist, the last thing they need, or a poet, is gold. Unless your name again, as I said before so often, is like Benjamin. And your name would need to be established in some guild as a member of any corporation if it tried to tell you who you were. Or what you had to do for the corporation, because whereas 008, I have sent a secret agent.
What kind of fool am I?
Into the field to discover.
There was a time when we were shown, when we did out and out, and there was a place when we were starting over. We let the bow break. We let the heartaches in. Who's sorry now? Who's sorry now? Who's sorry now?
Entertainer who write her own composition, but I know I can tell you no more what is love
Discover.
than
Yes, let's
anyone
just say not to establish. To
of you can
discover.
obey.
To discover what might be the lie, if you like.
May I tell you my
The
story?
lie that placed my Tilbury grand finale of Queen Elizabeth I.
Most players, you forgot to pick up from the winning guild.
The winning guild. Idiot, who come in with the justice bag? Swagger only.
Hey, hi there, pal. Want it? What's it? No.
What kind of fool am I? What kind of man am I? What kind of tears apart? My world. What kind of fool am I? That tears this pain and sorrow? What kind of wind will there be for me tomorrow? What kind of fool am I? For being, as they say, this girl of mine. That tears me apart, then leaving me this pain. It is no sorrow. It is no sorrow except for this pain of tomorrow, of your lover cries tomorrow. That's what a day. What kind of fool am I, who never fell in love? Who never found a boy or a girl? What kind of man leads an empire to any guilt or swollen promises? Lead them to me. For I am just a fool. For I am just a fool. I am justice a fool am I, the kind where love begins.
Would she be supportive of her soldiers who were about to go off to fight? The Duke of Medina, His Excellency, who they think that because a king of Spain, King Philip II, who was in some respects being blamed for this Spanish entourage of ships, might have had something to do with that war of the Spanish Armada. But how much do you know of the truth of that relationship, which Bloody Mary, let's face it, you called her that, I did not. I do not like the word Bloody Mary, because it does sound in some respect as though the lady was at some fault. Yet this was a staunch Roman Catholic, a very staunch belief about certain things. And we are not talking here about religion, viewer. We are talking about the belief she had about what you might call the virginal. Because isn't it truth that it is a misconception to brand such by names as virginal and virginal, when you are only told which lovers in Queen Elizabeth II she had? How much can a king cost a throne? In 1547, for the next 300 years, is told by the Resurrect in, for instance, the death of the king. Your own people murdered. Leicester, Bosworth Field.
Maybe you have a tune you would like to play for her.
1485, Bosworth, Battle of Bosworth, and whose remains you dug up earlier in the year beneath what became of the council car park, who in this lusty stealth of nations does have more fierce quality than doth go into a whole tribe of fops got between sleep and wake. Troubles, this field of troubles, even this squalor that is before an empiric state such as our Eastern sisters and great scholastic sopranos and contraltos, they are, truly. But who adulterated the music of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart has to establish what is the truth that is truly English, or what is the truth that is more truly Polish. That you don't have to ask someone who was persecuting and beheading King Charles I in 1649. You don't have to ask Oliver Cromwell, who was dying in 1658, Lord Protector of your country. You don't have to ask him why they excavated his remains from Westminster Abbey, 1660, and had them reburied in unconsecrated ground at Tyburn. You don't have to ask a Henry VIII, who is responsible for the disposal of some 6 wives, what is consecrated ground, because you are living on that consecrated ground, viewer. You are living in the Church of England, which King Henry VIII created by the hand of Thomas Cromwell. Now, so who is the king's fixer? The king's fixer was, to some extent, the king's son, who established by Edward VI, the Protestant in the woman, who established the in madness of sanctity, the suggestion that Catholicism could be supported any longer after 1553, you would need to ask William Shakespeare why the two gentlemen of Verona were not performed properly. It is, in some respect, you might say, because the Church of Rome was in some annihilated state some years, 50 years before, by His Majesty, that they call greatness. But that is so much more by brand than it is by honour. Then we come to the Duke of Marlborough and the Churchill speech, which I am sorry, but I have not written it yet. And I am in some dumbstruck by the escape of Gallipoli that allows the country to still further win. And why? I am at some defeat, as to what imprisoned and killed and murdered so many Australian soldiers when a country whose stated history about even its Australian artists now has placed them after painting a portrait of the Queen in an English prison. You might need to listen to my song for Aphrodite, and you might need to be told any number of lies about who I am, you are, in order to be accepted, why they do not want to publish it, why they did not want to put my Three Sisters on in the West End, why they lie about someone else having written it, why they lie about my compositions having been weak, why they lie about my lyrics not being strong enough. And while they hatch plans of idiots, and while they hatch plans and write books about you wanting to be in the music business, they are but based in arms who tell you lies, lies, and the lies of Bloody Mary. Ah, yes, but this, I feel, was more the woman of truth than the example that heralds and speaks so proudly before her soldiers at Tilbury. But for me, as you read in my film, and you see and hear me perform, this Queen knows nothing of it. This Queen, I am King, Queen. King, Queen. I am by. They say I am by the way. They say, and where does this soldier march in arms of truth for betrothal to one country when it's dead in truth are more truly buried than truth does be allowed to live? How stands a queen and before so great a regalia as the Prince of Orange, William III, King of England from 1689.
For I am just a fool.
What does Scotland think it will ever achieve
For I am just a fool.
in becoming ever independent, that true democracy will not also crush? That did never speak or mean anything by anything other than the 18th century Bonnie Prince Charlie, and so much our affections, Bonnie Prince Charlie, yes. This is because they knew from their ancestors, is it something other about the escapade and the discovery that Charles I had escaped and they wanted his head, but when he returned, it is the story, isn't it? Is it the story of the Bible, of the prodigal son, who goes back and is captured in the midst of the Isle of Wight saga and escapes, and then is finally beheaded. Is it just that the prodigal son is beheaded? If you study my recent work and writing, piano is from pathos. Pathos is the amalgamation of pathos. It is Greek, and it comes from the ethos, that is eos, who is the dawn. And if you read about the death is of the chariot, I am not William Shakespeare. So, reap and ye shall sow. This is the line which is the predominance of its entity as written in what may be deemed as the Holy Bible. Have you established this book? The answer to that is, it's being established. But if I tell you that it is being established since the time before, long before King Henry VIII, that had his writers in the name of Thomas Cromwell have a hand in printing new texts and translations from the Romans, and then agrees, a king who agrees with its greatness so much that by 1540 has Thomas Cromwell, who was the successor to Cardinal Wolsey, or appointed by the recommendation of Cardinal Wolsey some years before, has Thomas Cromwell murdered. Now, what kind of a tribute is that of religious things that says about reaping and sowing and having what you shall reap, that is not the barbaric tactic of countries who take another's land, and yet at the same time, whilst they might be accused of it, wasn't it even as late as Operation Barbarossa, which was the so-called German attack against Moscow, Russian fields toward Moscow, Stalingrad, Leningrad, and they've changed the name since. You wouldn't recognize them if you were there, layman. The Caucasus, and you study all these things, and you say to her, well, look, what is the history of my piano? Sir, are you elected by some favoritism, by some private impostor who calls themselves the general manager because they are great? Or is it that they are put there? Or is it that they are wearing the shoes of the late general manager who sadly died? Or are you real to the barbaric treatment of the slaves by the Christians? The slaves of what? Well, who were the Christians? Who were the Christians? Well, nobody really knows who the Christians were, because I'll tell you for why. There are those Christians who would say, well, Jesus was a Christian because this is embodiment in his name, Blessed Lord Jesus Christ. Or this is more the fact that Jesus was the King of the Jews. And this is because he was Jesus Christ, but he was King of the Jews. That further is confounded, viewer, in il pianoforte, that you call the piano the arpeggiata. You know, you can't pronounce it, can you? This was the name which had been intended by Bartolomeo Cristofori. But if you want to know the truth, it is not about the name that you call it. And we see all about this Chapel of London, and it's all a load of... Viewer, it's absolutely a load of rubbish. I could not write such lies myself. that they have private bidders bidding on these things. Now, that I am not saying is anything other than their right under some laws. But you must remember that Roman law, in the time of Christ, persecuted a humble carpenter and had him nailed to a cross for being a political risk. And yet, if you went up to any number of crosses and asked these people to state their names, would they not all be in some respect in awe of the pain that you are suffering, viewer? And I am so sorry that it has come that you have to listen to it from the horse's mouth. But this horse is of Perthnown, who asked of his mother, "Mother, can you prove to me that my father is the god of the sun god?" And this father, to prove to his son that he is the sun god, presented him with a chariot. But the horses of this chariot lose their way. This is the state that has elected men of honour, per se, to a parliament in London, to a parliament in Berlin, to a parliament as much. Is this affected of Russia? I know none of these things. And who these things they tell you are of the Russian state security, and what is wholly wrong or right, or and what the lies they tell about Stalin might, or do they, are they measured in the way Stalin might have played roll out the barrel, or might have played walk on with hope in your heart and you'll never walk alone? Or you believe that the Americans in World War II were signing up in their millions to fight because they knew what was just? But how many of those Americans knew the history of Mercedes, which in 1900 and approximately 1900, that is good enough, saw the birth of American Mercedes in New York, which was producing cars under some questionable license, because the statesman William Steinway had travelled to America and spoken with the likes of Gottlieb Daimler about their new invention of the motor car, which you know was chiefly designed by Carl Benz. And his beloved wife, Bertha Benz, who was in some awe of, shall we say, the riding horseman, to see her ride this beautiful car. But they did not have petrol stations in those days. We must digress. The John Broadwood and Sons was an invention, however, before the Mercedes was pillaged by the American states of the presidency. And the American car was become into the annihilated rust box, which it surely more did become, of many of those of you who would say that you never bothered to do anything about the rust because it would look after itself. Well, indeed, my friends, there are institutions looking after yourself, although you may not be aware of it. And we have heard all about the Mr. Snowden. Anyway, all that may be true or it may not be true. And how much do you even trust Mr. Snowden? Who would you know is the real conspirator, viewer? Well, Queen Elizabeth, she had her conspirators, and one of those was, in fact, the gentleman who went off to become the organist at Arnstadt in Germany, and Prussia then. And you can look it up. I'm not going to start looking things up for you, viewer, because you do not pay me. So let us look at the history of this piano. What is this history that is John Broadwood and Son? So we have approximately 1740. it is alleged, isn't it, that you hear all these stories about having built somebody having constructed something, or they had built some and such. Yes. We heard all about what happened at Kew Palace, don't we? Over what used to be Wolsey, Thomas Wolsey's palace that he'd built. And then Henry VIII and those various people have Wolsey denounced and robbed of his riches. I mean, viewer, are you completely mad in thinking that my piano is not the finest piano on the net? Or are you just telling me that you are humbly not knowing anything about it? Or are you really hiding the truth, that you know more than you are saying about the corruption of bidding? What are you telling me? What are you telling other people about your piano that you bought? How much are they telling you is the reason it won't play? Is it because it was a pile of junk to start off with? Is it because you didn't look after it? What is the truth? Is it because you play too well, you deserve a better instrument, and if you spend another 10 or 20,000 pounds, we think we can help you? My viewer, I will assure you that Mr. Les Dawson, who was one of my, as it were, my lovers. Well, no, that's carrying things too far. I did not appreciate the way he tried to play one of my compositions once, which to some degree sounded much like Roll Out the Barrel to me. But I can tell you that anyone who has studied with Mr. Ralph Reeder CBE has known the song Strolling, and if you tried to play Strolling like you were running from the Lord's, House of Lords, it would not be kosher, would it? No? Okay, so we have the history of the pianoforte, which was founded, they say, by some invention that was in the halls of wisdom and stored in one or two museums, the drift, cast adrift, of Bartolomeo Cristofori in 1700. And then we have the theory that the Tschudi, who was Burkhard Tschudi, who was this Swiss carpenter, who had built a harpsichord for Frederick, the Prince of Wales, in 1740. I mean, what do you believe? I mean, the Kew Palace, which it is now, where other instruments were made for his father, King George II, and Broadwood, have made instruments for every British monarch, of course, haven't they? Since Broadwood has held the royal warrant longer than any other warrant holder. Ah, yes, but does holding a royal warrant entitle, for instance, the lack of communication that pronounces the fact that Franz Liszt will not make his journey to Reading to perform the piano? Not because the Broadwood Grand is no good, but because he misses the train. Now, what is the truth about that? Is the real truth that he knew that the piano was so sabotaged that he did not want to perform it? Or did he genuinely miss the train? In truth, viewer, there have been some tragic accidents, and I would not be the last one to tell you that in some respects my teachers would be the first to tell you that I might have been one of those first tragic accidents that came to railways in my performance of Brief Encounter by Mr. David Lee. But if you study the author Ford on secret weapons, you would see, for instance, would you, about the truth about the secret weapons? Or would you see the weapon that was the phraseology of the Percy Bysshe Shelley, or the General Vezin, Marshal Vezin, whose excellence some 120 years later in Mexico had founded some great victories, surely, for the French monarch, who was, as you know, Emperor Napoleon III of France. But in whose name is greatness, viewer, that brings you, this pianist, you call yourself a pianist, in whose greatness lends you to play so perfectly Rachmaninoff, Franz Liszt, Schubert, Herr Mozart, and Bach, J.S. Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, Debussy, and we hear all about these warmongers who were the likes of Ravel, who were writing, and people like Satie, who were writing pieces like Gymnopédie. And you expect me to listen to the works of Percy Bysshe Shelley any more than the works of them? And expect me to believe that anyone who writes a book of So You Want to...
You forgot to pick up from the women guild.
The Women Guild.
...be in the music business is hatching a plot to generally liberate any single one of you. Viewer,
Idiot.
if you handed Schubert the running of the business of...
Swagger only.
Hi there, pal.
Burkat and John Broadwood, you could never know the truth to save your life. The piano, 7...
Want it? What's it?
What kind of fool am I? What kind of man am I? What kind of tears apart my world? What kind of fool am I? That tears this pain and sorrow? What kind of wind will there be for me tomorrow? What kind of fool am I? For being, as they say, this girl of mine. That tears me apart, is leaving me this pain. It is no sorrow. It is no sorrow except for this pain of tomorrow, of your lover cries tomorrow. That's what a day. What kind of fool am I, who never fell in love? Who never found a boy? Or a girl? What kind of man leads an empire to any guilt or swollen promises lead them to me? For I am just a fool. For I am just a fool. I am just this, a fool, am I, the kind where love begins.